Hello and welcome to Pitchfork Radio. I am your host, Shelley Johnson, and as a reminder, the purpose of this program is to offer ideas and examples of what others are doing to try to capture some freedoms in this world of clamped down fraud, corruption, and lawlessness. Dennis Wise is an independent filmmaker with a successful background in entertainment and media. He began video editing after discovering he had a flair for producing groundbreaking and exciting promotional videos for clients in the entertainment and leisure industry. Apart from producing documentaries, he still produces videos for private clients, internationally recognized hotel chains, and for the music industry. NWO, Communism by the Back Door, is Dennis's follow-up documentary to The Greatest Story Never Told, explaining how we have got to where we are today since the end of World War II. Many people are puzzled at the deterioration in all aspects of life, both morally and politically. This documentary proves that both the UK and the US are now under a communist regime headed for a new world order. For instance, many people have been fooled into thinking that the neocons were politically right-wing, when in fact they are Trotskyite followers of the communist revolutionary Leon Trotsky, who was murdered on Stalin's orders. Although with 17 parts, 15 minutes each, completed, the documentary is still a work in progress at this moment in time. Welcome, Dennis. It's great to be speaking to you again.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Yes, and I hope that we have uninterrupted connections this time, because last year when you were on my other radio show, Our Natural Rights, we ran into some connectivity issues that were pretty frustrating. So far, so good. So when we spoke last year, we were speaking primarily of The Greatest Story Never Told documentary, which I found just to be brilliant and extremely insightful, and I have found your new one to be no less amazing. And so I wondered if possibly we could recap a little bit of what your point was in producing The Greatest Story Never Told, and how we moved into your new one, which is, that one was pretty much pre-World War II. This one is picking up where that one left off. So could you kind of give our listeners a Reader's Digest approach towards that first documentary so that we can move directly into the new one?
Sure. Well, the first documentary was The Greatest Story Never Told, Adolf Hitler. And that was to counteract everything that I'd been taught at school, and most people had been taught after World War II. It was a story told to me when I was about 10 to 12-year-old by my father, who was down in the Balkans fighting on the side of the Germans at the time, who escaped the communist purge in Europe and came to the UK. And after I'd been taught at school about the Holocaust and this demonic monster, Adolf Hitler, I challenged my father when I got home, and he decided to tell me what he believed to be the truth, and I believed it to be the truth ever since. I couldn't really do anything about it until later years when the internet came about. I had to live with this story all the while, but it came in useful at times because I could see through the propaganda of the mainstream media. And for instance, Iraq, I could see right through that story, and pass that on to my sons, who I didn't particularly want to join the army. Which would have been quite easy, by the way, because a lot of people join the army over here because there's no jobs and wages are poor. But they didn't listen to what I said, and today I've got two, healthy young guys as sons. And like I said, come the internet, I had a decision to make. Do I let this story be known? And I also let people decide for themselves, by the way. Or do I bury it and just live life out, contentedly? I decided that wasn't the right thing to do because I had lost family in World War II. Even after the war, the massacres occurred, and I just felt it right to do that story, and it's been really well taken ever since. Banned from YouTube, yes, but the majority of people, the emails we get have been absolutely positive.
That's great to hear. I know when we first broached the subject last year, I don't even think people in my circle were totally ready to hear that information. although I had kind of entertained the concept a while before that, because I've learned over the last several years that everything we thought was true is a fraud, and everything we thought was fake has somehow proven to be more real than that which we're taught. So I think people now, with the quickening, that I like to call it, that is going on via the internet, via world events, etc., is making it more obvious that these historical so-called truths are just, wallpaper propaganda.
Paper thin, yeah.
So I'm more than happy to know the truth about that. It has also shined the light on some of my own personal experiences from a different vantage point, because I see authority in a completely different way than I used to.
That's right.
So I think it's been extremely useful in my life, and I know, like you said, the feedback has been positive when I've discussed it, and I've got several other friends now finally discussing the truth about this. So generally, when we speak of these what would you like to call them? Parasites, I guess, for want of a better word.
That's one word, yeah.
Yeah, we can look way back in history and see that this has been a long-standing, very patiently organized and presented plan to pretty much create this new world order that you were, speaking about. So a lot of people call them Zionists. A lot of people call them, globalists, New World Order advocates, etc. But I know that they've masqueraded as many political affiliations, and they've taken over religion and private clubs and groups and the bar association, the legal system, the financial empires, and the education system, just to mention a few. So what I wanted to know, and this might be kind of coming out of left field, but I wondered if you see any kind of recognition or similarities between this Communist Manifesto and the protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit to say there. I don't doubt for 1 minute that they're not fake. I do believe that this, as you say, this conspiracy, so to speak, has been going on for centuries, and it's handed down through families with the intent of eventually making their way to the point where they do control the world,
Well, and the thing is it's been very steady. It's been very subtle. It's been, they've used every technique available of mind control and distraction and orchestrating events to keep your eye off the ball. And I guess it would be similar to the frog boiling story that we're all familiar with.
Well, I think once you control media, I think that is a tremendous advantage, because then you don't even have to lie. You just let out certain aspects of the story that you want to be heard, and that can change everything.
You bet, and that's kind of censorship by omission rather than just outright censorship.
That's right.
Okay, so we're on the same page with the protocols then. Another thing that I find quite disturbing is that these Zionists or Khazars or whatever you want to call them are very, very protective of their own culture, and they don't want to dilute their traditions or dilute their religious tenets or any of that, but they sure as heck want to destroy everybody else's culture and their traditions and their belief systems. And they'll always act like the victims every time, which just blows my mind that people still fall for this.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
So these are the things that Hitler saw growing up firsthand in the devastation of Germany, which was purposely done. The table was set pretty much for that by World War I, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, coming from Austria, he saw it there as well. And so after World War I, this, the media's always portrayed this great myth of being stabbed in the back, that Germany was, that was a myth, but it wasn't a myth. In fact, they were stabbed in the back, and it's come to the fore with the internet because, the Jews did a deal with the British over Palestine, The Balfour Agreement is an agreement to hand over Palestine, which wasn't the right for the British to do, but they did, and that was if they brought the USA into the war in World War One, which they did, and which turned things around completely. So Adolf Hitler always saw that as a stab in the back, was not a myth but a fact.
Yeah, and when you talk about what we learned as, living in the countries that we live in about the axis of evil, and the Axis countries versus the Allied countries, and all of the patriotism and the rah-rah that went on for the purposes of propaganda to keep Americans particularly invested in the outcome of the war. And
sure.
In my opinion, I think that the naming should be completely the other direction, and I feel very saddened and ashamed to have ever bought that nonsense in the first place. But I guess we learn as we go.
It's easily done. A lot of people have said that, in comments, emails and comments on YouTube, that they felt, aggrieved now when they see what happened, what they feel is a true story of what happened. Mm-hmm. But it's like I say, we've all been fooled at one stage or another. They are very clever at what they do. They've had many, many years of this. And like I said, this control of the media, and especially with the coming of television, was a major landmark in mind control of the masses.
Absolutely. Last year I had a couple on that currently live in Uruguay who are pretty much experts in the techniques of mind control, and they presented the patent that was provided for television, and one of the hallmarks of the purpose of that was for mind control. It says right in the patent.
Without a doubt, yeah.
So that's not a big surprise. And then we have history being altered all the time through the control of the education system, to the point where, the kids in the school systems these days cannot even think straight because they're deliberately tying their minds in a knot. They're reducing their ability to problem solve and to see logic and obvious things. They're being educated into just being stupid little mind-controlled, brainwashed zombies. It's very sad to see this.
Well, a prime example, I don't know what your political feelings are over there, but I'm just giving this as an example. In one of the universities over there, somebody chalked, Donald Trump 2016 in this university, up all the steps going up in, up this stairway. And a lot of the students went to the head of the university and complained, feeling now they were frightened and intimidated just by somebody writing Trump 2016.
Oh, please. Yeah, everybody's so busy being politically correct and so busy being offended by somebody else's opinion. Relative to being politically oriented, my only affiliation is for truth. And I think all the rest of it is just a dog and pony show, a big distraction and a beauty pageant. So I've really got no interest in any of that, except just from the perspective of finding it so difficult to believe that people still think that's going to make any difference.
Sure.
So, for a long time now, there have been a group of Zionists running both political parties. They've made sure that they design it in such a way that there's very little difference between the two. That's and right. So that when people do get frustrated and they do decide, well, it's just time to throw the bums out, that it makes virtually no difference whatsoever in the progression of this plan, marching towards the globalist outcome.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why I find it difficult to believe that people who have been in these voting processes for so long and are so frustrated still think that that's an answer. Like staying in their broken system is going to fix it. That just blows my mind.
Yeah. And I can understand why, because, there's no difference now between Democrat, Republican or Conservative Labour in the UK. It's all the same people controlling it. And, well, like you say, once, take for instance, you've had enough of Bush, people want him out, so they pick somebody like Obama who think it's going to change things, and actually nothing changes whatsoever. it just carries on.
Exactly, because like you said, they're all run by the same group of elite shadow controllers, and they pretty much are all puppets, and they do what they're told. So like I said, it's mind-boggling to me that people still play in that arena thinking that they're going to create something different. It's very hard for me to fathom.
Yeah.
So I thought I would mention the tenets of the Communist Zionist agenda so that people could see what is going on, what has been going on. And these came from your documentary, so certainly they're yours, but I think they're worthy of speaking about. Okay. So I have 11 points here. The first one, it makes a lot of sense if you look at it from their vantage point, and that is to corrupt the young people.
Yeah, that's one of the points in the Communist Manifesto is to actually do that, distract the young people, mainly with sex, and just take their minds off the ball game, if you like. So by the time a number of years have passed, they wake up and suddenly they're in a different situation than they were, say, 5 or 6 years previous.
Yeah. It also suggests that we turn the young and, I imagine, everybody away from the awareness of their creator, their source, their higher power.
That's right. Again, I feel myself that World War I, World War II was not just wars about ideologies. When I look at the Bolshevik revolution, people call it the Russian Revolution, but the Bolshevik Revolution was funded by elites. Trotsky was a revolutionary, yeah, but the only thing he had in common with Schiff, the banker who funded him, was they were both Jews. Nothing to do with that movement being a movement of the masses. It was, in fact, guided by the elites, which communism is. And so you have... So what have they got in common? They're both Jews. They both hate Christianity, and Russia at that time was a Christian country, which they eventually took down. The same happened again in World War II, where they took Germany down, and all the Axis countries were all Christian countries that I point out in that documentary. Because Churchill once did a speech saying, this war depends on the survival of Christianity. When, as in fact, like I say, all the Axis powers were Christian countries anyway. So I'm looking at World War III now, and if the same goes along, and that is to say that they've won 2 world wars, these elites, they still have another one to win before they get complete control. And I know a lot of people have doubts about Putin, but once they sussed out the fact that it's a war on Christianity, the World War III, which must take place for them to take complete control, looks like it's going to be against Russia. And the simple reason from my point of view is that Russia is the last Christian country left.
I agree with you. I know they're trying awful hard to demonize him on about every level, but he's such a brilliant strategist that they haven't been able to really successfully, at least with those of us who are watchful, haven't really successfully brought him down. The recent release of these Panama Papers is a good example, because even though he was never directly mentioned in those, they did everything they could, to create this guilt by association to demonize him. And, he may very well be, one of those frenemies where the enemy of my enemy is my friend for the time being. And certainly he has his agenda. But if I had to choose a leader, which I just abhor that concept, I would pick him over Obama any day of the week.
For sure.
So you did already mention the hypersexualization of our kids. Do you want to go into any more of that?
Well, it's just that Hollywood plays a big part of that as well, and not only the sexualization of them, but this bringing on of homosexuality and transgenderism, etc., which they're pushing on the next generation now, so that it's becoming quite normal. Gay marriage is now accepted, in America and Europe and other places, and that was another major step, because what they're tending to do with Europe is that they're tending to make it pagan again. In fact, the whole idea is to go back to the city of Babylon. Things aren't going to be any different from that place, which was a godless society.
Absolutely.
They've done that with Europe now, and 28 countries have given up their sovereignty. So now we have, an exact copy of what the Soviet Union used to be. So yeah, God plays a big part in all this, because I've always said that a godless society is not a place where you want to be, because anything goes, and if anything goes, that means that, you know, it goes beyond my thinking, beyond your thinking. Some people think way beyond that, and it's a dangerous place to be.
Who was it that said that their primary philosophy was "do what thou wilt"?
Well, this is amazing character. This is because a lot of the music industry and Hollywood praise this guy. They openly talk about him and wear T-shirts, etc. But nobody really knew, or certainly I didn't know anybody who certainly knew what he was all about. So I did some work on Aleister Crowley, who was. It was called the most evil man of the 20th century, and believe you me, once I went into research of him, I don't think people were far wrong. And yet these people in the pop industry, and I've named quite a number, David Bowie being one who just recently died, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, all the top bands, look at Aleister Crowley as some kind of guiding light. But if you knew what he was about, you'd just be in disgust.
Absolutely. So in addition to the homosexuality and all that, they're also promoting abortion, which diminishes the respect for life, and all kinds of perverse, creepy behaviors are being made mainstream, even via legislation, which is very disturbing, but it is what it is. Mm-hmm. Then we have, we weaken the people through superficiality, and we destroy the people's individualism and ruggedness.
Yeah, because basically they don't like strong family ties. Because strong family ties brings on nationalism, and it's a lot harder for them to break down. So if they individualise and have people watching television and seeing what any dumb Hollywood celebrities up to, that occupies the mind, and also Hollywood spewing what they spew, they pick up the ideas, and eventually, and that is to break up the family. And they brought many things out, like feminism's another one, to do just that, because the last thing they want are straight thinking, high moral, strong families.
Right. Then we teach the people about democracy, which is just mob rule, and we seize power as fast and ruthlessly as possible.
Well, this is exactly what went on in Iraq. People were unaware about the neocons, which I found surprising myself when I researched that they were not actually the right-wing extremists that people thought, but they were Trotskyites. Trotskyite being one of the communist leaders in the revolution with Stalin, and these people follow him, which Bush, Cheney and Rumsfeld are all of the same ilk. And so when somebody says to me, like, at the end of the documentary, are you going to add up the total of the deaths caused by communism, I've got to say it goes on way past when the wall came down. It goes right on to present day, because the same people have been trying to bring down Syria. They certainly brought down Libya, and of course Iraq.
Well, and we can look at the Wolfowitz doctrine to show that that's been their template, 7 countries in 7 years, ostensibly to protect the civilian populations from these brutal tyrants, and bringing about regime change of the puppets that they can more easily control. Mm-hmm. Then we have, through the appetites of people being now perverted, they are easily led into debt by a government that is based upon debt, spends extravagantly, destroys its credit standing across the world, and causes inflation and general discontent.
That's right. Well, they did the same in Germany. The Jews have a knack of doing this, and in fact they did it in America in the 30s as well, where they build up the economy and everybody's feeling happy and wonderful, and they're taking out loans and they're buying land or houses, which looking at, the way things are going at the time, that's fine, we can afford this. But then suddenly, a few years down the line, there's a big crash, and all of a sudden people can't afford to keep what they bought and have to sell off cheaply, which these Jews buy up. And this has been done throughout history. It's a technique that they've got down to a fine art, such that people don't even realise. These banks aren't friendly. These banks are there to make business, and any chance they can make a business, they will do, including wars.
Exactly, and they finance both sides, so they come out smelling like a rose every time.
It's a win-win.
Yep. Then we have promote the dark occult through the media.
Yeah, well, this is a tricky one, this one, because people, a lot of people aren't ready to accept what I say. So I had to be a little bit careful, and I had to try and get the sources. And what I did was, it all comes from the fact that a lot of people say that Germany was into the occult, etc., and that Adolf Hitler followed Aleister Crowley and Blavatsky, which was completely opposite. It was the Allies which was into the occult, and that stemmed through Freemasonry. And I went onto an occult site, a website at one point, and I discovered all the lodges and occult lodges that Adolf Hitler closed down, and he closed Freemasonry down across Europe, and they only came back again after World War II because the Allies allowed them. But the main thing is, at one point, I think it's in part 2, where I have the head of the Lucis Trust speaking, who is an advocate of the Luciferian doctrine, and they house in London, the libraries of Alice Bailey and the books rather than the library of Alice Bailey and Blavatsky, and this is only a stone's throw away from Buckingham Palace. So this Luciferian organisation, which is linked to the UN, they have offices next to the UN in London and in New York, makes this now real because they actually preach this in the UN as well. So yes, there is a Luciferian doctrine which they aim to have as the main religion, and communism is the political aim.
Very good. Well, not good, but more understandable.
Sure.
Then we have passed laws against self-defense and gun ownership, which we're dealing with big time here.
Well, this is always going to come because those guns are a big danger to them. Like, they don't really want to go stomping around people's houses like when there's 20, 30 million guns about. Mm-hmm. So their aim is to take the guns, as you can obviously see, but they try and make it in a way where it's acceptable to the public because of these mass shootings, which a lot are staged anyway.
Oh yeah.
The fact is, but the fact is that Obama, admittedly, he couldn't do it just at a stroke. This is something which has to be brought on again pretty slowly, but eventually. I point out the line that he gave in his last speech on the gun control, where he said that they're going to make it a little bit harder for people to get hold of them. What they're going to try and do, I think, is nullify the Second Amendment. They're going to make it so hard to get guns that the Second Amendment won't even mean anything. That was what I saw from that speech.
Well, I think that's going to be an attempt. I think that the gun issue may be the thing in this country that stalls their plans.
Well, it may force people to rise up. I can agree with that because people are so, this Second Amendment means, well, the whole amendments mean so much to these Americans, and I must say, they're so lucky to have them. That they mean so much to them that I do believe there'll be a stand even by the people who in law and order, even they believe in it.
Right, absolutely. I've been quite involved in the scenario with the Hammond Ranch, the Bundy Ranch. I don't know how familiar you are with all of that.
Yeah, the Bundy Ranch I've featured in the documentary, which is a classic case of land grab, which is going on in the UK at the moment as well, which is never mentioned in the mainstream. The houses are being taken, people are being thrown out on the street, and this usually is just killing people. Yeah,
and I think they're using these in Oregon, for instance. It seems to be a nexus of or a template to see how much they can get away with, to see if they can control the people's perceptions of what actually happened there in that little county,
Sure.
And those of us who've been involved in it quite in depth are showing the twisted, horrific connections between the BLM and the UN even, and the local community, quote unquote, leaders and their Masonic ties. I mean, the judge in Harney County is the head Mason there, and I mean, we have just discovered all kinds of crazy things going on, and maybe the fact that is the template, and we're seeing so much come out about it, maybe that will be helpful in waking the people too. I don't know.
For sure. Well, like I said, I saw the shooting of on YouTube of the guy involved down there. Yeah, that was just horrific. That was just pure satanic.
It absolutely was. It was a ritual sacrifice. It was planned way in advance, and they were really hoping that they could get everybody in that car taken out. I went to his service, which was about 4 hours from where I live, and the outpouring there was just unbelievable. I've never seen so many people come from so many places to honor an individual.
Did you show that on mainstream at all?
Yes, it did, actually.
You did, right.
Yeah, and some of us took video and we plastered that around. And
sure.
Okay,
so sad. It was sad.
It was awful, horribly. So then we have rewrite history via the media and the education systems to censor truth, to desensitize, demoralize, and numb the people to their actual state of enslavement. And I believe the majority of this is being done so that people can't learn from the past.
That's for sure. That's exactly right. There's a documentary out on YouTube, which is in German but has English subtitles. I think the book is out as well, called "The War Had Many Fathers," and that stipulates towards the end of his speech, the guy who wrote the book, that they actually changed the speeches of Adolf Hitler to put into school books to make Adolf Hitler to be the aggressor and the starter of World War II, and that's just in the school books. So. They had quite a while in Germany. I made a point of this in the first documentary. I mean, they couldn't even say the name Adolf Hitler for a number of years.
Yeah.
And they burnt a lot of the old books and brought in a lot of the Jewish people from America like to take the jobs in Germany. And they still have them today. A lot of Germans are pushed out of certain jobs. So, yeah, there's no doubt that took place.
And then the last one is to punish the dissenters or to make examples of those that try to warn us.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen that with the truth tellers. There's a lot of people, they're scared to come forward because they see what happens to truth tellers. And not just in America, but especially in Germany, because if you mention anything about the Holocaust in Germany, people don't realise that you can't even plead not guilty. There is no not guilty plea in Germany. It's a guilty charge, which either you ask for, if the judge won't be too hard on you, or insane. You've got two choices.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and even some of the lawyers which have defended some of these people have been jailed as well.
Holy cow, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we study the true history, and that's obviously harder to find than one would think, we would see that this has been the template for all of the takeovers that have been attempted and have been accomplished. I think a good example, if people aren't aware of it, is what was brought to South Africa and Cecil Rhodes, who Rhodesia is named after.
Sure.
But that's been an ongoing, horrific, genocidal nightmare for the white European culture that was, begun down there.
Yeah. And
I think they're using that also as a template to see how much they can get away with in this goal of white genocide. And, I find that conversation to be almost the hardest conversation of all, is to try to point out to people that the Western European cultures have been and are being targeted and diluted and destroyed.
That's right.
And I don't know what the resistance is to that. I guess it's because we're all so used to hearing, about how horrifically the other ethnicities have been treated. And I'm not saying that they haven't, but this is a clear agenda.
Yeah, and like I said, you go back to World War II when Churchill and Roosevelt both signed the Morgenthau Plan. And a little bit later it was leaked to the press, and Roosevelt kind of backed off, saying, "Oh, how could I ever sign such a plan?" But secretly they did follow it through, and many Germans were killed after World War II. In fact, more Germans probably than during World War II. A lot of people were told to get out of their houses in East Prussia, and just 5 minutes to leave with what clothes and baggage they could take with them, and millions died. And so, this has continued through the ages, nice and subtly, as they always do, because they're under no threat once the Hitler regime had fallen. And, the next stage, was to bring in Muslims into Europe. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think that that's a catastrophe in itself, but the main catastrophe is going to be whenever Turkey gets into the EU, then you have another 80 million Muslims to completely finish the job off. They'll be able to go and live anywhere they want in Europe, and a lot do live in Germany anyway. Yeah. So that will probably finally be the death knell with the 80 million Turks.
I know they're working real hard to get that to happen. And
Sure.
Turkey seems to be really a big pivotal point right now for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of secret societies that are not so unknown as they were maybe 30 years ago when I first started talking about this. We have the Bilderberg, the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, Council on Foreign Relations, and then there's a whole slew of others. Those are the best well known. But can we talk a little bit about how carefully they're organized and how they follow the tenets of this Luciferian order and
Sure.
kind of draw that together for us?
Yeah. Well, in this episode yet to be, I've almost completed the next episode, and that is on about the Rothschilds. And I'm going to explain just what the situation is. When, the main power source for all of this is London, the City of London, which I'm talking about the city now. This is the 1 mile square in the middle of London, which is not even belonging to England.
Right.
It's a state within a state with its own police force, its own laws. Even the Queen has to bow her head and ask for permission from this mayor of the city, not the mayor of the Greater London, the mayor of the city, who's chosen, I think it's been chosen since about 1806 by the Rothschilds. He is the monarch of the city, and the Queen has to ask permission to enter. So this power elite in this base in London, even Parliament can't move without their permission, because all the financial buildings and everything are all in London. I mean, they've got something like 75 American banks, you've got 365 foreign banks, and all the main banks of England are in this area, the stock exchange and other institutions in this 1 mile area. So it's kind of another country in a country with control of the purse strings. And in 1913, unfortunately for America, these people took control of the Federal Reserve, which now means that they control the purse strings of the United States, which then leads to the foreign policy, etc. And which actually leads now to this celebration on the 4th of July, commemorating the British freedom from the British tyranny rule is now just an exercise of mass illusion.
Absolutely, and I think it might be good to point out here that we also have kind of a triumvirate of city-states where the City of London, like you said, is a country within a country, and they are the financial part of this triangle. We have a similar situation with Washington, D.C., where it resides within the landmass, but it is not America. It is the military arm of this triangle. And then we have Vatican City, which is the same type of scenario, and they govern everything ostensibly religious, spiritual, etc. And it contains like every record, every baptismal record, every affiliation, every document that any of us have ever signed or been assigned to us. So that's why you can't get into the archives underground, because holy smoke, everything you would find would just be mind-blowing, I'm sure. That's
right, and these elite people that you name, like the Bilderbergers, etc. These all stem from the City of London. The Council of I think in part 2, are going to the Council on Foreign Relations, which used to be the main thing in America. This was the shadow government. Still plays a big part. But then you've also got the Trilateral Commission, which is more of a worldwide thing, because apparently you've got not just Europe, which has gone under 28 countries have lost their sovereignty to form one big landmass similar to Soviet Union. You then look to America and you see Clinton, when he was in charge, like he signed the NAFTA agreement, which was the start of a policy to eventually join Canada and Mexico and America all together. And all across the world, there's just 10 areas which they hope to join and then make it easier for the one main government to control. So, I mean, even today, I do a little bit on in this last episode on Rupert Murdoch, who is Australian, but he's actually an American citizen and is part of the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, he in England, in the UK, is given carte blanche with the satellite TV, and it holds, the press in Fleet Street, he rules. So you've actually got a member of the Council on Foreign Relations dictating the media and having this one sole right of satellite TV. There's no other companies allowed. Just so it's just so biased in this country, people can't even see it.
Mm-hmm. I believe he runs Sky News there, right?
That's right.
And then over here it's called Fox News.
Same thing.
And it is. Yeah. It's exactly the same thing. And I can't believe in my progression towards awareness that I actually ever spend any time on Fox News, because, gosh, if I look back there now, it's just nauseating.
Yeah. And what's amazing is not only were the neocons found out to be Trotskyites, etc., but this guy who's obviously a multi-billionaire, his nickname is Red Rupert.
Oh, go figure. So how does this all tie into the Tower of Babel and Nimrod?
Well, that was the first attempt of a New World Order, and attempt at getting rid of God in the society. And anything debauchery, was anything anti-God went, like I say, homosexuality and bestiality, etc. All these things came apart in Berlin as well in the 1920s, which Hitler again managed to get rid of. And all of them people went to Hollywood, and that's where today Hollywood is one of them places of debauchery as well. Uh-huh. So, it's been an ongoing thing for a number of years. Thousands and thousands of years, and like I say, Freemasonry is born in that.
Absolutely. So no problem. It sounded like a perfect time for a little bit of music right there. So the thing that I'm really focusing on right now, and I think you can expand upon this because you just spoke about Freemasonry, is the occult aspect of it, the mystical aspect of it, and how they are so tuned into earth rhythms and longitude, latitude, and numerology and symbology. Yeah. And it's not that those, that the mystical world shouldn't exist or whatever. I mean, it does. Everything is energy. Everything is frequency. Everything is harmonics and vibration and magnetism. But that is a force that can be harnessed for good or evil. Right. And they've obviously chosen evil with it. I don't even think that they're terribly concerned that we know that at this point, because I think they feel like, everything is lined up going according to plan. But I think it's pretty important that we talk about the symbolism, the fascination they have with certain numbers, the methods that they're using to implement their agenda that is of a mystical, a dark occult nature.
Yeah, I think the key to it is, as you say, energy. I'm quite sure, for instance, one of them ley lines that you talk about was when President Kennedy was assassinated, and I'm quite sure that they would have known of the response worldwide. I can remember being a young boy here in the UK and hearing that President Kennedy had been shot, and what the effect it had on myself, so what it had on other people, I can only imagine. And this immense feeling of sorrow which went around the world, would have just been what they were seeking. It's this surge of energy, certainly negative energy in that case. On the same ley lines was atomic bombs which were dropped on two cities, and although they say one city wasn't intended, by some chance there were both cities which had the most Christians in at that time. And Truman, of course, was given a 33-degree level of Freemasonry, which is always honorary.
Yes, and that was just mostly a ritual sacrifice, because that came at the end of the war when it was virtually already decided who was going to be declared the winners, So sure. It definitely was. It was his sacrifice or his action that elevated him to that 33rd degree. And I find it kind of interesting that, this parallel we're talking about is the 33-degree parallel. And so Dallas is on the 33rd. There's a lot of things going on in Atlanta that is the 33rd parallel. For instance, the Georgia Guidestones are right on the 33rd parallel. So they do have this major fascination with that number. And from a numerology aspect, it is an extremely powerful number. It is a very high power number.
That's right.
And so they've found a way to tap into the power of this amazing prime energetic numerology, and look what they've accomplished with it.
Yeah, I mean, even 9/11, I mean, the surge, what went around the world at that moment as well was a huge surge of energy. And like I say, they are, I think, it comes from the mysteries which they were taught way back when and handed down, not to ordinary people, but to the elite people of society. And this is where, I mean, anything, if any person out there just thinks for a second, in a normal country, the last thing, if you want to run a country, if your intention is to look after your own people and do the best for your country, the last thing you need is a secret society in that country. The only people who are happy with that secret society are the leaders who are members of that secret society, and they keep the secret from the mass.
Well, and Kennedy, not long before he was sacrificed, ritually murdered, he spoke very poignantly of these secret societies and what a danger they are to any kind of a healthy civilization.
That's right. In the documentary, I point out that we didn't listen. Instead, we voted for him because it's quite open that, Skull and Bones, Kerry and Bush, one of the main secret societies, and Bush was voted in as president. So it's, they've managed to get their way even with Kennedy warning.
Another thing that I think is important to mention at this point, where we're talking about the energetics, because I was in 4th grade, I believe, when Kennedy was assassinated. I'll honestly never forget the impact it had on my teacher, and the impact, for days, months, weeks, years following that it had on people's energy, because even at that time, the United States was looked at as that shining light on the hill, and that which all countries aspire to be, blah, 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 that nonsense that we were told and taught about patriotism. And the energy of that had to have been a huge capture for them. The negative sadness and terror and the things that it creates is what they feed off of.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
The only thing that I think comes close to that, and I'm jumping ahead many years, is 9/11, because it had a tremendous impact worldwide as well. And I'm sure they feasted, very well off of that one.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did, because I think most people, when you look into that situation, the one outstanding thing is that third tower which came down, which they tried to hide anyway. But if anybody knows anything about demolition, there's no way that you can just decide to bring a tower down in the middle of a city just on a whim. That's got to be prepared, even by computers, to actually bring down a tower. I saw a chimney being brought down, which took nearly 6 months to organise, and that was next to a river. They just didn't want it to fall into a river. So that fact alone, that it came down and was brought down with detonations, opens the question to the other two, because them planes should never have brought them buildings down anyway. So it looks, without a doubt, it was an inside job.
Of course, and I live in the demolition capital of the world. Every time a casino gets worn out or somebody wants to replace it, we go out and watch the controlled demolitions, and so that was just so obvious to me the minute I saw it. And even in the controlled demolitions, we do not see this dustification which we saw of the towers, where everything turns into dust. Steel beams turn into dust. So tell me that airplane fuel has the capacity to do that, and I'll tell you're smoking something.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But they get away with it because, mainly because of the TV in the corner. I'm quite sure some people, after initial shock, are more interested in what the next episode of the soap is. Yeah,
no doubt. They're the Kardashians. So we have a connection that I think is worthy of exploring, and you did a beautiful job in the documentary about the fallen angels, the Luciferian phoenix connections with Baphomet and the other symbols of that religion, for want of a better word. Would you like to tie that together? Because I think it's pretty powerful. We're seeing these types of symbols everywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, there's probably a number of people listening tonight who are a little bit, bemused by all of this. They can't possibly think that people actually believe in this. But I always say it isn't so much what I believe or what, you believe. It's these people do actually believe it. And we saw, for instance, I mean, a lot of people were shocked at the Eurovision Song Contest when a woman or a man came on dressed with a beard and in a evening gown and won the Eurovision Song Contest and gave a speech after to say that you know you are and we are unstoppable. Well, I know exactly what she meant, but the members of her family didn't, and other people that I know as well. But that certainly is their agenda, is to bring this Luciferian doctrine into play, which, like I said, is all attached to the Lucis Trust. Mm-hmm. And it stems from back in the Bible, obviously. And it's come down through the ages, and these people are now trying to be, they're probably a little bit more open than they've ever been, but for centuries, it's all been underground, and it's all been in the elite societies. And certainly with the Olympic Games, this is another, we're talking energy again. I mean, these Olympic Games went around the world to 500 million, something like that, and we actually had, although it was hidden from the public to a certain extent, because the event of Lucifer landing this burning phoenix, which went on in the closing part of the games, was interrupted by certain bands playing all the way through. So although the crowd would have seen what was going on, they would have been quite puzzled at it all. But I did a little video and I put it all together at the end, and it's quite easy to see that there is a landing of Lucifer after the rising of the burning Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may say, well, so what? But what is that actually doing in one of the major sporting events of the world, which is basically, for families?
Well, and you can look at the symbolism of the Olympic rings, and I mean, it's, if you know what you're looking for, this is also blatant, but it's presented as sports, it's presented as gather around the TV as families and blah blah blah. Yeah. You indicated in part, whatever it was, that the fallen angels are actually androgynous, and this is what they are trying to produce in their transgenderism, their transhumanism, and all of that. Why do you think that part is so important to them? Is there an end goal behind what they're trying to manifest through this transgender androgynous thing?
Well, my philosophy on it is I think they want to kill the mother side of the family, and by having an androgynous population, should I say, this kills the mother side. It kills the family completely. And in Europe's case, for instance, when you've got rid of the white race, you've mixed them with all these Africans and mixed race coming from Afghanistan, etc. The solidarity of that family of the white race is gone, and you're going to have a slave system of communism, which is, like I said earlier on, is not brought about by the masses taking down the elite. It's the elite fooling the masses so that they can make the masses into slaves. And obviously the white race has always been a predominantly fighting race. The last time it obviously rose up was in World War II in Europe, and if they can kill that off completely, that's a huge feather in the cap to keep this downtrodden population, which will serve, without even questioning. I also mentioned in the documentary, it shows the courthouse in Tel Aviv in Israel with the triangle with the Eye of Lucifer on top, and obviously Israel is the target for them to rule all the Goya of the world. And these Goya who are helping them, who are classed as traitors, are being for a sharp shock when they find out that all Goya to the Jews are just meaningless cattle.
Yeah, it's going to be the willing minions, the order followers that are tossed under the bus first.
Yeah, that's right.
We also have a big mural at the UN that is quite interesting from the perspective of this Phoenix Luciferian androgynous perspective, and I was not even familiar with what that looked like until your documentary. So I urge people to definitely look at the documentary and go dig into that mural, the UN mural. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it actually shows soldiers from World War II going down into a pit, mm-hmm. Which is, I suppose, symbolic for them because, that's a war they won. It's all this links to this Luciferian doctrine, which the UN, of course, does. I do an episode on the UN, and certainly there's people in the UN who are Luciferian. I believe you have to be Luciferian anyway to be in that organisation, and it shows many quotes from people past and present.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating in terms of even the origin and the purpose of the UN. We all think it's, some elevated body,
yeah.
That is supposed to be there to help resolve conflicts. But, I mean, even I remember in 8th grade we did a mock UN study where, I think I represented Algeria or something as a representative, but I did quite a bit of studying before I participated in that, and it seemed to me that this ostensibly peaceful organization had a security council that was full of the very bad guys that they supposedly were created to take care of. And so once again, it's the leadership that perpetrates the evil while they're pointing their fingers elsewhere.
Well, basically, it is the World Army, or it intends to be the World Army, World Police, or the policing of the world. And even George Bush went to the United Nations to try and get permission to invade Iraq. I mean, you can remember one of his cohorts with his little test tube saying that mass destruction and everything. And that was all at the UN. So it overrides even the American policy.
Sure, and it is these international treaties that all these countries have gotten themselves into, which circumvents any constitution they might have or any ability to internally manage their direction.
That's right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where these bad guys come from. I mean, we've called them the Jews, and we've called them the Trotskyites, and we've called them the Bolsheviks and stuff. But what's their real origin?
Well, there's one or two people. David Duke now thinks that they're not from they're not Ashkenazi, from Khazaria in over there in deep Soviet Union territory. He has a completely different aspect of it. But I've found many historians who still believe it, and I still do believe it, that these people did not originate from Israel, but were converted back then, around about the time of Genghis Khan even. And these people have been slowly drifting west. A lot of them settled in Germany, and Germany accepted them to begin with. But they're of the nature of, even though they're only, say, of 2% of the nation, they can get to certain points by infiltrating the jury, the judges, the law system, politicians, the banks, till eventually they get control of a country. They are, as we mentioned early on, parasites, and they just take over the living entity that they get to. And unfortunately, America has been one of them conquered.
Yeah. When I was doing some studies on the origins of the so-called Jews, I got to the Khazarian connection as well, and they were actually a very warlike people that eventually were chased out of those deep regions that used to be Soviet Union, and just like everywhere else they've ever gone, they've been chased out because they're just so evil and vicious and warlike.
Yeah, and of course, they're very money orientated. They've perfected the financial system. The usury. Do a section on usury, which is a powerful force for them, because this compound interest is incredible. It's just it's almost satanic, if you like, because it's a destruction in itself. Which, if you're on one side of it, the money just pours in. But if you're on the wrong side of it, then you're in debt forever. You can never get out of this debt.
Exactly, and that's how they collapse all these currencies. And I'm not a raving Bible thumper or anything, but I was raised in a Christian religion, and I know that the story of Jesus and the money changers at the temple was all about the destruction of usury.
That's right. And of course, the Catholic Church at one time was against usury, but then they kind of changed it. Probably, I think it was around about the Vatican II, where they kind of made it a little bit where they didn't mind a little bit of usury, but nobody ever actually set the rate. And so, it just carries on. Now we get Christian countries where Christians are charged usury, which is a joke, really, in my eyes.
Well, yeah, a little bit of usury is like being a little bit pregnant, It's pretty impossible to delineate where the line is there. The other thing I thought was kind of interesting was that Hitler had pretty much identified the origins and the scheme of these people as he was growing up. I mean, he was a brilliant researcher and a very incredibly intelligent man. And he identified the path that Germany was on because he could see the history. He knew, where the Khazars came from, and he knew what their patterns were, and he knew that they'd been chased out of every other place that they'd ever inhabited because of their, their debasement of the culture and their destruction of the traditions in society. So, I mean, it made total sense to me when he was made chancellor that he started cleaning house, and he moved these people out of positions of power, and he made no bones about what he thought of them or how he felt about them. And this was like the gigantic slap in the face that they just weren't going to put up with it.
Well, that's right. A lot of people are unaware that at that time in 1933, when Adolf Hitler eventually came to power, the Jews didn't really know what to do because he started to remove communists who were 90% Jews at that time anyway. And even if they weren't communists, they removed the Jews from the powerful positions of the law and the banks and etc. and the politics. And so they had a international jury had a meeting in Switzerland in 1933, and they came out with a demand to Germany to get rid of Adolf Hitler and to reinstate every Jew and every communist that he'd got rid of. The Germans turned around and said, this just isn't going to happen. So Samuel Untermyer, who was the American leader of the Jews, went back to America and gave a speech in 1933 on the radio. It's all historical fact, and declared holy war on Germany. So that's in 1933, and what they tried to do is starve them with blockades, etc. And the German people, this is coming from Benjamin Friedman now, who was living in Germany at the time, so as he says, he knew more better than anybody, and he knew that the Germans had decided that Europe was either going to be Christian or it was going to be communism, or another word for the Jews. And so, the whole World War II was built on this fact. And like I say, if you check all the Axis powers from Italy, right through, they were all Christian countries. And like I said, they all entered the Soviet Union at one point to try and kill this atheistic communist drive.
Yeah, and it continues. And I guess I should go on record here by saying that I don't adhere to any religion because I believe they've all been pretty much corrupted and co-opted.
Sure.
But I do see that the energy behind the Christian religion is something that has to be squashed from their point of view.
That's right. I mean, the Jews have always been an enemy of Christianity since Christ was crucified, and through Masonry, they kept it going secretly.
We're getting a lot of interference on your side. Is there something going on over there?
No, you're really trying unusual because NSA using status tricks.
Yeah, every time you stop talking, it stops.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, I'll phone you back.
I wonder if we were to stop for a few minutes and pick back up, if that would help. Say something again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I don't think we can continue with this, with the interference we're getting. I don't know that you're experiencing it on your
No,
end.
it's okay to me, but I'm not surprised because
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, this is what happened to us last year too, when we started getting into the stuff that was, deep enough that the NSA starts being called in.
Yeah.
So perhaps we should just kind of call it quits at this point, and maybe we can pick up and do part 2, maybe even perhaps a little bit later this week.
Yeah, sure.
All right, and then that way we'll get everything in that I really wanted to do today, but I don't feel like I can subject the listeners to the garble that's coming through here.
Okay.
So let's do that. I think we've got a lot of meat for people to dig into now, and maybe...
Can I just say they can go on YouTube to actually watch the 17 episodes? If they go to
guess what? You just cleared up. Let's see if we can go for a few more minutes.
Okay.
So I think it's important, if we can, before they start scrambling the signal again, if we can talk about all of the areas that the Khazarian mafia has infiltrated.
Well, there's a list of, if you go to Google and list the bankers on Wall Street, a whole lot of them are listed there. They're all Ashkenazi Jews.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one area. I mean, Hollywood is another area which I go into again on the documentary, where again they follow this Hollywood and the music industry both are run by these Freemasons. And again, you've got people like Will Smith coming out and talking about Aleister Crowley, or at least quoting his works, which is crazy because I'm quite sure if people knew about Aleister Crowley and what he got up to, it was just unreal.
And it seems that the people that start out the most decent in Hollywood or even in the music industry are the ones that they go after the hardest, because I've been a real big fan of Will Smith until he started this nonsense, and I'm going, yeah, they got him.
They got him, and his kids are acting it out as well. You know what I mean? I think his young son there wears a skirt, etc.
Yeah,
it's all the way now.
And his daughter is just hypersexualized. It's very sad.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't know about, I know the terminology, but I didn't understand it, is the casting couch. Yeah. How does that relate to this, what we've all called Pandora's box for years?
Well, the thing is that once you get to a certain level, and these people to get to this level are all talented, highly talented people, whether they be musicians or actors, but they get to a certain position where they're not allowed to go any further unless they conform with the Freemasons in charge, and their doctrines now, I believe, some happily do it. When you look at George Clooney and Brad Pitt, I believe they're quite happy in what they do. But I guess there must be some others who have a decision to make, highly talented people who can make a lot of money, but would have to return to a life of, just mundane, ordinary. So, there's no easy way out for them, and I feel that there are some that have taken it on. And I mean, you look at all these Illuminati symbols, which they all throw in the music business.
Yeah.
And I was speaking on a program not long back about Hollywood, and one of, for instance, was the Game of Thrones, and just how much of the influence of the Jews in the Games of Thrones there is. I don't know if you've seen the series, but it's got everything in from from paedophilia, homosexuality, lesbianism, you name it, everything under the sun is in that program, which is at the moment in its 6th series.
Yeah, it's been going on a long time. I started watching it originally, and I could see where it was going. I wasn't going to put my energy there. Sure. But I am a big, time historical buff in terms of my entertainment, and I do like to watch things that ostensibly present history, but there's very few things out there anymore. I mean, I guess you could go pretty far back to see if you could find something, but they don't reflect true history at all.
And the problem is a lot of people learn their history from Hollywood. Yeah,
exactly. So we have something in the music industry that is similar to this casting couch, and it's called the Crossroads.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a myth, so about in the early days of the blues, when you go down there and sell the soul to the devil. And this is a continuation of people not having to go down to the crossroads, but simply signing away the soul to the devil, which I'm quite sure some of today's artists like Gaga and Beyonce, etc., have all done and are all happy to do so. And once they do that, they do get the riches, etc. I mean, in one part, of course, like they can turn on you, and there's one or two actors who have felt the wrath of the Freemasons in Hollywood, and I explain all that, and I try and cover it as best I can so people can believe it, because a lot of people just won't face up to it.
I was converted to a form of music that I never particularly cared for till I met my husband, and we call it New Country. I had images of, the weeping and wailing and flush down the toilet of your heart and the truck and the dog and all of the, the characterizations that associated with country music. But the stuff that I really started to enjoy when I met him I have watched it become perverted over the years, where it used to be, quite family oriented, and it used to, be worthy of listening to the stories that were told in the songs. But in the last, I would say 2 to 3 years, maybe very, very strongly, it seems that every single song that is sung by the male artists, and now it's becoming the female artists, is let's get drunk and have sex.
Yeah.
And every single thing is talking about the taste of wine on her lips and how great she looks in that red sundress and how we go out to the cornfield and we do our thing because, that's all people can do now is get drunk and have sex.
Yeah, I can't agree with that. I mean, I don't follow that particular music, but I know that on YouTube there's some people who've got some YouTube videos up and point out the fact that these new country artists are going down that road. So, I can't deny that.
So, yeah, that's been a little bit heartbreaking for me. So when I stroll down memory lane, I don't listen to any of their new stuff, I'll tell you. I think it's important before we call it done today that we talk about the plan for Greater Israel.
Sure.
I believe it's called Eretz Yisrael. And I believe what they're trying to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they trying to get back the amount of, like the 800,000 square miles of territory that they claimed back when they were still called Khazars?
That's right. This has been spoken about by previous leaders of Israel and even written about, so there's no denying it. It is a fact that they want to desolate the Middle East for two reasons, obviously. One is, so that they haven't got any challenge at all down there. Iraq now is, excuse the French, a shithole, as is Libya now, and Syria has become, even though Putin managed to stop the progress. And so, everything's going to plan. I mean, they're the cause of it, without a doubt.
So why do you think, is there a rhyme or reason behind why they chose to masquerade behind Judaism versus maybe Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or anything? Do you think it was just a luck of the draw, like an eeny, meeny, miny kind of thing?
I'm unsure. I am unsure. But I saw a documentary that not long back. It was an excellent documentary on the Jews, and they spoke to rabbis, etc. And the conclusion at the end was their God isn't our God. I believe their God is Lucifer. And so maybe these people, you see, Lucifer doesn't ask for anything. I mean, if you believe in God, etc., there's certain commandments, you've got certain boundaries with God, but with Lucifer there is no boundaries. And if they can tap into this source of power, then, these people, would probably look at it, especially the type of people they were, they would probably think this is religion for us.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot associated with that is probably something that may never come to light. But, as I was raised LDS Mormon, and we were taught in no uncertain terms, and I know this goes on in other Christian churches nowadays as well, even though I'm no longer LDS, where they do teach this that is, Israel is still the chosen nation, still the chosen people. They're our brothers in Christ, our brothers in God, and we should all, stand up for the victimization of the God's chosen, blah, blah, blah. I look back on that with horror once again, knowing better now than I did then, but I still see a lot of the Christian philosophy being apologetic for what's going on over there. How can you look at what's being done to Palestine with any kind of ability to rationally think and make an assumption that that's okay to think that Israel is being perpetrated against with rocks while they're throwing phosphorus bombs and decimating hospitals and schools and civilization in general? How do people have such blinders that they can't see that they're apologizing for the world's greatest source of evil?
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for the internet, we wouldn't know half of it as well, because, like I said, the media being owned by the Jews keep it all under wraps anyway. So what we know is probably only a fraction.
Probably.
And certainly, the Palestinians have felt the full brunt of it.
Do you think that there is an incentive in the Christian community, the Christian pastors and what have you, via the tax-free exempt status that they need to keep, that holds them in line and keeps them preaching this kind of garbage?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the financial thing, rules a lot of people. I mean, I do know in America these Christian evangelists are wholly behind Israel, which is to me just just goes against all Christian teaching. Yeah,
exactly. So this is kind of why I steer away from organized religion, because it seems like every aspect of it has been perverted and taken over in one way or another.
Well, certainly when you look at the Pope and he goes around now saying that homosexuality is fine and, atheists can go to heaven and, it's fine to race mix in Europe, he's certainly singing the same tune as the New World Order.
Exactly. And he walks around in that yarmulke, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be the dead giveaway to me. It certainly was when I first started seeing the truth here. So I think it's really crucial for people to learn the truth about Hitler and pre-World Wars and all of that in order to crack open their minds enough to realize that was basically an experiment, and that was basically to set the agenda firmly in place to make that a worldwide agenda. And it seems to be one of the last big misunderstandings or false history that people still cling to about Hitler. I mean, even people that should know better, even people that are brilliant in so many other ways, will start declaring, well, this guy's just like Hitler. Well, actually, no, he's not.
Correct.
So I think cracking open the resistance that people have to learning the truth about Hitler and what was done to Germany and how that precedent was set back then is absolutely crucial for them to be able to start seeing what's happening now.
Well, the thing is with the documentary, I mean, it takes people, if they take it all in and watch it, it takes them through that taboo of World War II. And to a lot of people, that's not an easy thing. I mean, there's a number of people have said in radio shows that I've listened to who've mentioned that documentary and said they couldn't sleep for several nights. It is certainly, this mental torture that you have to go through, to actually finally then be released of this freedom, because the mind control after World War II was not just in Germany, but was worldwide.
Absolutely. I've been through many versions of that sleepless night thing, where I've had to challenge the belief systems I was raised with, where I've had to challenge, I've literally challenged everything that I can think of that was taught to me via the
education system.
The Zionist controlled indoctrination system. And it is difficult. I'm not saying it's not. And it does feel like the sand is continually washing out from under your feet as you're standing at the ocean side there. But, you do come out on the other end, and you come out stronger, and you come out with the ability to connect the dots and see how these situations historically are repeating themselves over and over and over again. And at this particular point in our world history, we have to know that these elites' God is money. I mean, as much as we call it Luciferianism, they worship money. And it is through that money system that they have got us all by the you-know-whats. And we're seeing as that system starts to decay and deteriorate and crumble, I think it's really important, perhaps as we wrap this up, to mention that the things that are of intrinsic value are the things that we need to be stocking up with, things that you could trade, things that you could barter, things that everybody will need, and things that inherently have value, like, land and precious metals and food and that type of thing. I know right now there's a lot of things going on in the financial system worldwide where they are virtually clamping down on the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. And it's anybody's guess what will take its place, but I don't think it's going to be a smooth transition like when they eliminated the British sterling as world reserve currency. They had something sitting in the background that effortlessly was moved into place, and I don't think that's going to happen this time.
No, I think the internet, it must have been good for them for some reason, because otherwise they would never have brought it out. But it's also had a negative effect for them, and it's been positive for us, because I can honestly say without the internet, we would be absolutely clueless, absolutely in the dark.
Do you find a ray of hope because of that, in looking at what's happening in the context of everything you know?
Well, I think knowledge is power, and I think the more people who understand what's going on certainly helps our situation. The only positive I can say is after 2 world wars, they still haven't got the complete dominance they require. Now, but these people don't move by votes, as we spoke about early on. These people run 2 world wars. There's only going to be a world war going to remove them. And like I said again earlier on, I do believe there will be a World War III. And even though, if for instance, if I die or whatever in this particular war, I still find that more satisfying than being an actual slave to Israel. If I were defeated, if they lost the World War, for me, I don't think it's the end all. If we can only win that World War, we can start again.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who have participated in this awakening that the internet truly has brought about, whether that's what their plan was or not, regardless of the gatekeepers that they've installed and the spy surveillance mechanisms that they've installed. I still believe that ultimately it's like the Gutenberg press was to the millions of people who had no clue what was going on. So if people are not educating themselves, it's certainly not for lack of information. The thing that is a big problem is ciphering through, pardon my French, the bullshit, to be able to get to the truth. And you have to develop kind of a bullshit meter, bullshit protectors to be able to help you discern the truth from the disinformation, the misinformation. But I do agree with you. If it weren't for the internet, we would have been taken over a long time ago, just completely.
Yeah, for sure. We've already seen the demonizing of Putin. There's a lot of people in this country, look at Putin now as the new Hitler. And I'm sure it'll get even worse, come the time that war may be apparent.
Well, that can be looked at in both ways. I mean, the people that are uneducated are looking at Putin as the Hitler that they think existed. Yeah. And the people that are educated are looking at him as the Hitler that they know.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting position for him to be in, because he is riding that fence of those who know what he's trying to do versus those who are, making comparisons between him and the fairy tale version of Hitler.
That's right.
So it's a pretty fascinating thing to observe. And I'm kind of there with you as far as, if this world war comes to pass and if it takes out all of us, I'd rather be on that side than this side. I do not consent to full-on slavery, and it's hard enough the way it is right now.
That's right, for sure.
So I guess we can go full circle and go back to the very beginning about how I wish to leave people with an idea of something that they can do, something they can implement, some action that they can take that will move them out of the hypothetical education part of things and into hopefully some kind of action that will benefit themselves, their family, freedom in general. Do you have any suggestions in that regard?
Well, to be fair, there's not a lot people can do at this stage, only, to share the information with other people. But even that can be a difficult task because people, some people do refuse to accept. But if you can share the information, I mean, there's some great work on the internet by other people as well, just to awaken people to the fact that, because knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I think it was Ezra Pounder who said, to die without knowing why is to die like an animal. People need to know why these things are happening. And when that day comes when we can do something about it, we'll be prepared,
Exactly. And the thing that I'm focusing a lot on right now is the energetics of all of this. Because with each new individual that joins this quickening, this awareness, we amplify the energy on our side of this.
For sure.
And if we can remain aware that our energy is being used either to benefit us or to harm us, then we need to be in a position of knowing where we're spending our energy.
Yeah.
And there are methods and mechanisms to harness the light as well as this darkness that they have managed to harness. And that is another aspect of my focus right now is how do we harness the energy for the benefit of our brothers and sisters and all living creatures on Earth.
For sure.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I hope people that listen to this will listen to it with an open mind and that they will be willing to challenge these preconceptions that they've had that are just as natural to them as waking and sleeping, and realize that when you stay in these misinformation zones that they create for us, it's not benign. You're part of the problem. So you're either part of the problem, you're part of the solution, and there's just no more room for fence sitting.
I agree.
So I appreciate you taking the time. I know it's really late there, and
not a problem.
But you're also a night owl. I know that. So thank you again for the time and the insights. And I do highly suggest that people go to the documentary. Can you give us the name of it one more time, please?
Yeah, it's New World Order Communism by the Back Door, and it's in its 17th part. 18 is not almost completed, and you can catch that in my playlist on Dennis Wise on YouTube.
Fantastic. Glad to hear it. And I've been sending a lot of people there already just in preparation for doing this with you. So
thank you.
Thanks very much. Hope you get some rest tonight, and let's stay in touch.
Okay.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
And thank you all for listening. I hope you'll refer this YouTube video to your friends and family, and that they will learn something and that you will learn more than we were able to deliver to you today. And with that, I'll sign off until next time. Take care, honor yourself, be truthful, and hold your energy high. Goodbye, everybody.